I've been in real estate for years. I've walked through houses that smelled like rot, condos infested with cockroaches, and mansions where the owners swore their furniture was possessed. None of that ever really bothered me until I met the house with the chandelier. That one still follows me. It happened 2 years ago, in the middle of autumn. My boss called me into his office and handed me a folder. "Old apartment downtown," he said. "Price is weirdly low. See if you can move it." When I opened the file, I saw why he called it weirdly low. The place was at least a third cheaper than anything else in that neighborhood. Prime location, large layout, once considered a luxury build back in the 82nds. The photos showed heavy wood floors, arched doorways, and a grand chandelier hanging right in the middle of the living room. It looked dated, sure, but far from unlivable. Still, something about the price made me uneasy. Deals that good never come clean. The next afternoon, I drove out to see it. From the outside, the building looked like every other aging apartment block downtown. Faded beige walls, steel balconies, the faint smell of mildew drifting through the hallway. But the second I opened the door to that unit, I knew something was wrong. The air felt thick, not dusty, not humid, just heavy, like breathing through fabric. My chest tightened. I remember thinking it was probably ventilation or mold, something rational. Always something rational. The apartment itself was strange. It was clear that once upon a time, it had been expensive. The crown molding, the marble countertops, the enormous chandelier with crystal drops in the center of the living room. Remnants of wealth, but the atmosphere inside felt stale. Sunlight came in through the curtains, but it didn't seem to reach the walls. Everything was just a little too dim. As I walked around taking pictures, I heard a faint dragging sound behind me, like fabric or rope scraping across the floor. When I turned, nothing. No wind, no movement. Just silence so complete I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I forced myself to finish the tour, took my measurements, locked up, and left. I told myself it was just nerves. A week later, I brought 2 clients and one of my coworkers to view the property. They already knew about the price cut, and they were excited, until we walked in. Almost immediately, the temperature dropped. You could feel it, like the air itself had exhaled. One of the clients frowned and said, "This place feels heavy. Something happened here?" I hesitated, then decided to be honest. "There was a suicide," I said quietly. "A previous tenant. It happened a few years back." The other client, an older man, pointed up toward the chandelier. "Right there, wasn't it?" I froze. I hadn't told them where. "Yes," I said finally. "That's what the report said." As if responding to him, the chandelier began to sway, slowly, creaking on its chain. We all stared at it. The chain squeaked, metal against metal. The light fixture trembled, just slightly, though the air around us was perfectly still. A chill ran through me, the kind that starts between your shoulder blades and crawls down your spine. "Let's check the bedrooms," my coworker said quickly, his voice too loud. He herded us away like he couldn't stand another second in that room. The master bedroom was worse. The air was foul, stale, and faintly sour, like something had rotted there long ago. I tried to open a window, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like something was holding it shut from the outside. That was when I heard it, a sigh, long, low, close enough that it stirred the hair on the back of my neck. I spun around. Everyone else was standing near the door, pale and silent. None of them had made a sound. "Let's go," I said, "now." But the older man shook his head. "Wait, I just want to see that chandelier again." Before I could stop him, he walked back into the living room. He reached up and brushed his hand against one of the hanging crystal ornaments. "Don't touch it," I shouted. It was too late. The moment his fingers made contact, the chandelier started shaking violently. as if something unseen had grabbed the chain and begun to twist it. The crystals clattered against each other. The metal moaned. The lights flickered on and off so fast it looked like lightning in a storm. Then came the sound, a sharp, high-pitched scraping, like rope burning against metal. The air grew heavy again, pressing in on us from all sides. My vision warped, edges bending, colors bleeding. I could feel something around us, circling, closing in. "Get out!" my coworker yelled. We sprinted for the door. Just as we reached it, it slammed shut hard enough to rattle the walls. I grabbed the handle. It was so cold, it burned. It wouldn't turn. And then, that same sigh, only this time, it was right behind me. When I turned, I saw it. A shape, suspended in mid-air near the chandelier. A woman's outline, hazy and colorless, swaying slightly, as though an invisible rope held her from above. Her head hung to one side. Her hair hung down like wet strings. She was moving toward us. My coworker screamed. I threw my shoulder into the door. It burst open, and we bolted down the hallway, stumbled into the elevator, and slammed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I heard it again. That scraping sound, distant now, but unmistakable. The slow, rhythmic creak of rope sliding across metal. We ran straight to the security office. The guard took one look at us and didn't even bother asking if something was wrong. He just sighed. "You saw her, didn't you?" I stared at him. "Her?" He nodded slowly. "The tenant who hanged herself. Red dress. Couldn't let go. Every few months, someone sees her, hanging there on that light. Sometimes she sways. Sometimes she sighs." I couldn't feel my legs. My coworker and I dropped the listing that same day. But the strangest part came later. For the next week, both of us had the same dream every single night. In the dream, we were standing in that living room again. The chandelier above us was swaying gently, just like before. And from the dark ceiling above it, something started lowering, inch by inch, a pale hand. Then a face, eyes open but lifeless, coming closer, until I could see the faint marks of the rope around her neck. Each night, she came a little closer. And I know one night soon, she won't stop above me. She'll reach down, take my hand, and pull me up into that cold, airless dark where she still hangs, waiting. It happened a few summers ago, not long after I transferred from Taipei to Taichung to start fresh at a new real estate firm. I'd only been there a few days when my boss handed me what he called a prestige listing. A corner unit on the 27th floor of a high-rise downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, perfect light, a panoramic city view that glittered at night, the kind of place buyers dream about. The building even had a reputation for celebrity residents, doctors, TV anchors, a retired politician or two. On paper, it was the easiest sale I could have asked for. But from the start, the people around me acted strange about it. When my name got attached to the listing, my coworkers started giving me these looks, like pity or warning. Finally, one older agent pulled me aside and said quietly, "You should look up the history of that unit before you go." But that night I did. And there it was, an old headline buried in a local news archive, a tragic incident. A young woman who'd fallen or jumped from the balcony of that very apartment. A chill ran through me, but I told myself it didn't matter. People buy and sell homes with stories all the time. The view alone could sell the place. I decided to check it out in person. When I opened the door to that 27th floor unit, the air hit me like a weight. It wasn't musty or stale. It was heavy, charged, like a storm was about to break. I moved through the rooms, taking photos, noting measurements, trying to focus on work. But every time I passed near the balcony, my chest tightened. I couldn't bring myself to step close to that wall of glass. Even through the closed sliding doors, the space beyond seemed to hum, as if the air itself were alive. A few days later, I arranged an open viewing with 3 interested clients. They already knew about the incident. The discount had piqued their curiosity. At first, everything went well. They admired the layout, the light, the city stretching out beneath us. Then one of them asked, too casually, "This was the one where someone jumped, right?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The others fell silent. That client, a man in his 40s, began walking toward the balcony. Before I could stop him, he slid the glass door open. A rush of cold air hit us, so sharp it felt physical, like stepping into a freezer. The man froze halfway out, his body rigid. Then he turned, beads of sweat running down his temples. "Do you feel that?" he whispered, "like someone's watching us?" No one answered. We just stood there, the wind pressing against us from 30 stories up. Then I shut the door, hard, and ended the showing. That night, I dreamed I was the one standing on that balcony. I could feel a weight against my back, cold hands pushing, and then the sickening lurch of falling. I woke gasping. The same dream came again the next 2 nights, identical in every detail. On the 4th day, I got a call from a man who said he was ready to buy, cash, no financing, but he wanted to see the place at night. 10 o'clock, he said. Everything in me told me to say no, but the commission would have been huge. So, I agreed. We met in the lobby at 9:55 p.m. The building was quiet. When we reached the door, I knocked out of habit. Knock, 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 and said softly, "Excuse us for entering." A beat later, from the other side of the door, came 3 clear knocks in return. The buyer frowned. I laughed nervously and told myself it was just an echo. We went in. The lights were off. I used my phone's flashlight to find the switch panel near the kitchen. When I turned back, the buyer was already standing by the balcony, gazing out through the glass. "This is where it happened, isn't it?" he asked without looking at me. I nodded. "Please, don't open it," I said. He smiled faintly. "Just curious." We moved back to the living room to discuss pricing. While he was talking, I heard it. A soft cough, close but not coming from him. We both turned toward the balcony. The glass doors were shut, yet outside, beyond the pane, something moved, a blurred silhouette framed by the moonlight. It didn't look like a reflection. It was too distinct, too deliberate. The buyer's voice trembled. "There's someone out there." He swallowed hard. "But we're on the 27th floor." That was enough. I grabbed my bag and told him the showing was over. That night, the dream came again. Only this time, I didn't wake up when I fell. I felt the wind screaming past me, the city spinning below, and as I plunged, I saw a woman's face rising from the darkness, pale, eyes open, hair floating upward toward me. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. When I finally jolted awake, my throat was raw, my sheets soaked with sweat. I couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, I drove to a small temple outside the city and told the priest everything. He listened quietly, then said, "You've been seen. Do not return to that place. If you do, the next time you dream of falling, you won't wake up." That same day, I called the owner to terminate the listing. I gave some excuse about personal reasons. There was a pause on the other end. Then she let out a soft, knowing laugh. "So, you noticed too." I never went back. Even now, years later, whenever I drive through that part of town and glance up at that gleaming high-rise, I swear I can still see it, a vague, gray figure pressed against the glass on the 27th floor, staring down at the street. And every time I blink, it feels like it's a little closer. I'd only been working at the real estate office for a few months when this happened. I was still new, still desperate to prove myself, to hit my sales targets, to be the kind of agent who could close a deal no matter what. But the house on the edge of the city changed that. That house taught me that some doors should never be opened. It was a gray, rainy afternoon when my coworker, Brian, and I got the call. The seller said he needed to sell fast. He was moving overseas and didn't care about the price. The number he gave us was so low it didn't make sense. A 2-bedroom apartment with a storage basement? That kind of listing should have been gone in a day. We decided to check it out ourselves. By the time we arrived, the rain had turned to a fine mist. The building stood in a forgotten corner of town, cracked walls, flickering hallway lights, a mailbox stuffed with junk flyers. The whole place had the air of somewhere that people used to live, but didn't anymore. The seller hadn't shown up. He'd left the key in the mailbox, just like he said. When we opened the unit, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Damp, sour, like wet concrete and old wood. It was the smell of a place that hadn't been opened in a long time. The layout was simple. 2 bedrooms, 1 living area, and a narrow hallway that led to the storage room in the back. But even from the doorway, I noticed something strange. The air around that hallway felt heavier, darker, like the light didn't reach it properly. Brian noticed too. "Weird," he said. "Feels colder near that end." I laughed it off, pretending I didn't feel the same thing. Probably bad insulation. We started the walkthrough. I took notes on my clipboard while Brian tested switches and doors. Everything seemed fine until we reached the living room. He turned to me and said quietly, "Do you hear that?" At first, I didn't. Then I realized what he meant. A faint, rhythmic sound somewhere behind the walls. It was soft, but it wasn't the pipes. It sounded almost like breathing. I swallowed hard, probably the ventilation. But even I didn't believe that. Eventually, we ended up at the door to the storage room. The hallway leading to it was darker than the rest of the apartment. I couldn't explain it. Every other bulb worked, but the one above that door flickered weakly like it was dying. "I'll check it out," Brian said, fishing the small key from the ring. Something in my gut screamed no. I can't explain it. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was the kind of instinct you feel right before a car crash, when your body knows what's about to happen before your mind does. The lock clicked. The door opened. A wave of stale, freezing air poured out. The room beyond was pitch black. We both switched on our phone flashlights. The beams cut through the dark, revealing stacks of damp cardboard boxes, a pile of old newspapers, and what looked like clothes tossed carelessly into the corner. The place reeked of mold and something else. Something faintly metallic. Brian stepped inside. "Probably just storage junk," he said. Then he froze. His light was fixed on something in the corner. Dude," he said quietly. "Tell me I'm not seeing this." I stepped forward, shining my light where he was pointing, and that's when I saw it. It was a wooden doll, about 2 feet tall, slumped against the wall. Its painted smile was chipped and crooked, one glass eye missing, the other catching the light in a way that made it look alive. Its head was tilted just enough to make it seem like it was watching us. A chill ran down my spine. "Let's go," I said. "We've seen enough." We snapped a few quick photos, locked up, and started to leave. I was halfway through the front door when I heard it. A sound. A single, unmistakable sound. Cough. It came from the storage room. Not a creak, not the building settling. A soft, human cough. Brian and I both froze. He looked at me, eyes wide. "You heard that too, right?" We didn't wait to confirm. We locked the door, sprinted down the stairs, and didn't stop until we were inside the car. Back at the office, We tried to convince ourselves it was just our imagination. Rain, stress, mold, whatever. We uploaded the photos from our phones onto my computer. Every room looked normal. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. But when we opened the pictures from the storage room, something was off. In one of them, the doll wasn't slumped anymore. It was sitting upright, its head turned directly toward the camera. And both of its eyes were intact. Brian swore, under his breath. I zoomed in. The more I did, the less clear the image became, until it looked like the doll's face was moving. That night, I dreamed of the storage room. The door opened on its own, and from inside came a raspy whisper. Come in, come back. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The doll was standing now, smiling wider than before. Its jaw cracked open, and I could hear something wet and hollow laughing inside it. The next morning, I showed up to work pale and exhausted. Before I could say anything, Brian said, I had the same dream. He looked terrified. It was chasing me. We couldn't shake it, so we went back. The building security guard was an old man who had worked there for years. When we asked him about the previous tenant, he hesitated. Then he said, You didn't know? That unit belonged to an old lady, lived alone for decades. She took her own life down there, in that storage room, burned charcoal, they said. He looked away. The doll was her only company. She talked to it like it was her child. My blood ran cold. We thanked him, left, and closed the listing the next day. A few weeks later, some investor bought the place online, sight unseen. I didn't ask what happened after that. But even now, years later, I still dream about that hallway. I still see that faint shadow where the light doesn't reach. And sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I swear I can hear it again. A small, dry cough coming from the corner of my room. Like something old and lonely is still waiting for me to open that door. I've been a real estate agent for a few years now. I've seen filthy hoarder units, half-collapsed basements, creepy landlords, paranoid buyers, you name it. I thought I'd gotten used to anything a property could throw at me. Then I met the apartment that proved me wrong. It started like any other listing. I got a new call about a place in the middle of the city. Old building, good location, 3 bedrooms, tiny balcony. On paper, easy sell. The owner was a young woman, mid-20s maybe, looked exhausted and strung out. Her hands wouldn't stop fidgeting while she talked. She told me the place had been sitting empty for a while, and she needed to let it go as soon as possible. That phrasing stuck with me. Not sell it, let it go. But I didn't think much of it. We sat down, went over the paperwork, signed the listing agreement. I did my usual due diligence and asked what I always ask, partly for legal reasons and partly so I don't walk buyers into lawsuits. No incidents, right? No history, nothing I need to disclose. For a second, her face lost its color. Then she forced a smile and said, very quietly, No, nothing serious happened there. That answer was not the same thing as no, but she shut down after that, and time is money in this job. I told myself I was overthinking it. I planned to go the next day to take photos, measure the rooms, get a feel for the place so I could write the listing. The next afternoon, I drove over. The building was old. You could tell it used to be decent. 70 brick, narrow hallways, that kind of depressing beige tile that always looks damp. When I stepped into the stairwell, the air was cold and wet, like the whole place hadn't breathed in a long time. I remember thinking, it smells like a shut-in's laundry. The unit was on the 3rd floor. When I got to the door, something already felt wrong. The paint on the door was bubbled and stained like old nicotine. The gap around the frame smelled faintly moldy, like standing water. and something else underneath it, something sweet rotten. I knocked out of habit. My knock echoed down the hallway and came back to me like I was in a much bigger building than I actually was. Then I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The first thing that hit me wasn't the smell or the darkness. It was the temperature. Inside that unit was colder than the hallway. Not nobody's lived here in a while cold. I mean the kind of cold you feel in your teeth. I reached for the switch. The ceiling light flickered a few times, then settled into this sick yellow glow that barely reached the corners. The living room still had furniture. Couch, low table, an old TV stand. Everything was coated in a film of dust so thick it looked like ash. The air felt dense, heavy, like the room didn't want me in it. Okay, I told myself. Take the photos, get the square footage, get out, easy. I started with the primary bedroom. The bedroom had a double bed, no sheets on it, just a stained mattress. There was an old wardrobe against the wall, one of the doors hanging crooked, like someone had yanked it too hard. I lifted the camera, got a few shots of the room. Then my camera screen glitched. The live preview went fuzzy for a second, like static or motion blur. Even though my hands were steady and I wasn't moving, I frowned and tried to refocus. That was when I felt it. Wind. But not air from an open window. It felt like someone had just walked past me. Quick, close. Close enough that the hair on my arm lifted, as if something brushed by. I spun around. No one was there. The bedroom door was still half open behind me. The hallway beyond it was empty and silent. All right, I told myself. Chill. You're jumpy because the place is gross. Just finish. I lifted the camera again. That's when I heard it. A sound came from underneath the bed. Low, wet, somewhere between a moan and a whisper. It wasn't loud, but it was wrong. I froze. Every instinct I have, and I'm not a superstitious person, lit up at once. I crouched. I don't know why I did that. I shouldn't have done that, but I did. I crouched down, reached with one hand, and lifted the hanging edge of the bed skirt. There was a face under the bed. It was a woman, or what used to be one. Her skin was too pale, the kind of pale that isn't skin anymore. Her cheeks were sunken into sharp hollows. Her mouth was slightly open like she'd been trying to speak for too long and forgot how to close it. And her eyes. Her eyes were open, wide, and completely, horribly empty. She was staring directly at me, not in a vague, unfocused way. She was looking at me. I screamed and fell backwards so hard I slammed into the wardrobe. The door rattled. I dropped the camera. My legs wouldn't move. My throat wouldn't work. For maybe 2 seconds, I swear to you it was real. She was there. And then she wasn't.